there. So yeah, so I set up a Zoom account
Mhm.
for recording. So we can pull. I think we can pull the file down. I'm saving to the Zoom cloud right now if I set up
Okay.
correctly. So we can always pull it down and edit it. I'm not a video editor, but I'm assuming someone like you or who does event recording, we can edit this video and post it to YouTube if need be.
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna eat lunch while we wait here.
Well, so everyone gets a good recording of you eating lunch.
Yeah. It's a multitasking kind of day. We're gonna go advanced vote here. I think after we pick up the kids, it's right next to my son's school. So
Okay.
we were like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, if you've already decided, already made up your mind, then there's no point in waiting.
I don't even know if I have, to be honest. I just don't know if I'll be any more decided like a week from
Mm.
now. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna vote. I get it done, and then we'll see what happens. I guess.
My daughter's in grade 9, and they just watched for school. They just watched some of the leaders debate.
Mm.
So when she came home, we're like, "Oh, what'd you think of the leaders debate?" And kind of paraphrasing her, she's like, "They're all just children talking over each other."
Oh, they totally do. That last one, like not the one last night. Excuse me. But two before, I tried to watch it, and I couldn't. Like, you couldn't even understand what they were saying because they're just blah 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 blah. And who? Oh, Maxime Bernier, like so bad for interrupting. I couldn't believe it. Like, you would be halfway through listening to someone else, and then he would just start talking. I think they were all like that, but he was really bad for that.
Yeah, I only watched bits and pieces of it, but yeah, that's kind of the impression I got. And then it's like,
I don't
who
know. I was
can?
a bit disappointed in the moderators. Like, that's when the moderator should step in
Mhm.
and be like, okay, one at a time or something.
Yeah, they need like a microphone mute button or something. Like, boop,
Yeah,
problem solved.
totally.
Well, I wonder if Shane's gonna come back here.
I'm going to continue working on this. I'm trying to get a Docker build working for one of my apps, containerizing it.
So what trouble are you having with just containerizing it, or you just need to do it?
I'm trying to use an Alpine
Oh,
Linux image just because it's quite a bit smaller than the Ubuntu ones I have used. But in doing that, I'm just having issues with some of my gems not installing right and stuff like that.
oh, yeah. Give me one sec. I had that problem too.
Did you? I can show you what it does. One second. Sorry, I'm just picking up from yesterday, so I'm trying to remember where I am.
Yeah, I had quite a few problems getting it run too.
I think this was the one. Let me see if this does. It'll take a second. Oh, what am I doing now?
So I've got it mostly working just a basic Rails app. Like it doesn't have any fancy gems or anything. But there's a link I posted in the chat there.
Yeah.
Um, that should build you a basic image. And I was also trying to get an image that I could use for development and production. So I was kind of playing around with that a bit.
Yeah. So I right now in my projects I have two. I have like a full Ubuntu install with all of my dev tools that I use as a base container for my dev environments. And so I have that set up now for multiple projects where I can just like open it up and start developing. So this one, I have one that's kind of based off of that, but it was, I think, 13, like a 1.3 gigs when it was put together. And normally you want to have images that are quite a bit smaller than that. So I was reading about how to make it smaller, and they were saying use Alpine Linux, which I have for some other ones, but just in this one, it was not working because there was an issue with, I can't remember. It should tell me here in a second. It was one of the Google gems.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it sounds like you have like I just set it up for a basic app, and I had to. Yeah, there were some missing items that I had to install or custom install.
Yeah. Yeah. See, this is what I'm seeing. And like they say it should work and install on Alpine Linux. So I was just going to attempt to do that on its own and see what happens here.
Hi, Dana. Is it Dana? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Dana?
Dana?
Oh, yeah, Dana. Hey, Dana. You're on mute right now. It seems to mute as soon as you join.
Yeah. Uh, Oh, okay. If you have a question, you could either type it into the chat there or post it on Slack if you wanted. Oh, and it's pronounced Dana. Okay.
Yeah, I think Dana could probably teach me. So cool. It looks like, are you posting in chat? It looks like, Dana.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea was if people wanted to come in, our idea was people would log in and then they could ask Mark, in this particular case, Mark, and questions about JavaScript or Rails. And then eventually we'd have different mentors to ask questions about different topics. So like maybe a different technology or maybe some more soft skills like project management, starting a business, stuff like that. So I don't know what level of, it sounds like you and Mark know each other. So if you wanted to be a mentor at a future one, Dana, I don't know what your skill set is or anything like that, but we could talk about setting that up. Yeah, and Mark and I were just currently, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We could probably talk Matt. Oh, so sorry, I'm not sure who Matt is.
I can answer that one. So Matt works with Dana at Code and Effect, and so they know each other quite well. Matt's on the Slack, like Matt. I can't remember his last name right now. He was talking this morning. Matt Ryan. I actually don't know how to say Matt's last name. Maybe Dana can tell me, but it's Matt Reimer. R-E-I-M-E-R.
Yeah, I've met him at the Ruby meetup before. Yeah.
Yeah. Or sorry, I spelled that wrong. R-I-E-M-E-R. R-E-I.
Yeah, so if you don't have a question, Dana, Mark and I were just talking about setting up a Docker container, but for Alpine Linux. So he was having some trouble getting a Google gem installed.
Yes, there's a gRPC gem so this project I'm taking over, and the Google APIs one, I guess, uses it or something. And so it doesn't seem to install properly, or so it installs, but then it doesn't work properly when I'm trying to spin up Rails to do a asset precompile for my Docker container. So just trying to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, so it doesn't give you any. So it installs correctly, it just doesn't when it runs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
trying to load it. Yeah, here I can show you. I guess we can share screens, can't we?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So let me clean this up a bit. So just for reference, so here we go. I'm in terminal. I've got Docker. So I'm hitting Alpine Linux. This is the latest of the 2.6 branch from the official image. So if I gem install gRPC, which is what they tell me to do here on their website, then that works. So it grabs what it needs and successfully installs. But then if I go B, for example, require gRPC. I just did this. Yeah, here we go. And it says load error, loading shared file, Linux SO. I'm just trying to figure. I think that might be because it's on Alpine and not on like an Ubuntu.
Oh, do you need to install the GCC? Anything like that?
Something like LD is a linker, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm trying to figure out what this is and what, because I think that wouldn't be there on Alpine, but then people are saying it's installed for them on Alpine. So
what did I have to install? Let me take a look here.
Yeah, see? Like, there's people talking about it.
Because I had to install the build base so that I could compile some gems. I think like Nokogiri.
Someone's saying install this. Let's try that. libgc.
It's really going to depend on, what version of Linux are you, or Alpine Linux? You're running the latest, right?
Yes, but you know, I probably erased all the cache in this one too, I bet. If I was them, that's what I would do. But if I do this again. Oh, no. Nope. CG compat main head. Excuse me. Build time.
Well, it looks like it's there. So it's not in the Edge version. It's on the 2.6 or whatever you're running.
Maybe this. How can I search? Oh, am I doing it? I was doing APT, wasn't it? Maybe I have to do this. Oh. Well, that doesn't make sense.
Oh, how are you using Bash?
Oh, sorry, I'm using emotes in my Docker image now, aren't I? Yeah, I'm not in my Docker image.
Oh, yeah, I think Alpine uses SH by default, doesn't it?
I always use APK, but honestly, my actual understanding of Alpine Linux is quite limited. Like usually I only use it for making Docker images. And so I will say I don't know. So you usually just use, you use APK or use something else?
I usually use Ubuntu, but yeah, I've been using, I just like, it's kind of similar boat to you. I was started mucking around with Alpine images because they were a lot smaller. Yeah. Oh, hi, Will.
Okay, so here we go. That's installed.
It doesn't look like you have a microphone set up, Will, so you can try chatting in using Zoom chat. Oh, that looks, hey, there you go.
Oh, come on.
Is it the same one? LD Linux?
So.
Yeah. So what are your build packages you're installing by default?
Pardon?
What are your build and dev packages in your...
So I'm basing off the Ruby Alpine one, so I don't actually know, but let me see if I can find that on the Docker Hub. That might tell me.
Oh, I can see your microphone, Will, but you're muted by default. So Mark and I are just talking about Alpine Linux and Ruby, but if you have a question for Mark, let us know.
All right. This is the one I'm using? Yeah, there's the Docker one.
Yeah, you're still muted, Will. If you need a hand, just chat something or type in the chat window if you need technical assistance. Oh, you're unmuted now. But we can't hear you if you're saying anything.
Right. I'm just looking at their Docker file.
Yeah, because you got your compiling, but yeah, I had installed a build base, Mark.
Mhm.
The APK package, there's one called build base.
Yep.
You get a bunch of gems to compile, so I don't know if you have that.
Let's try that.
By default.
Build base like that, or?
Let me check the build. Yeah, build dash base.
No. APK. Oh, right. APK. I remember it's add with APK.
Oh, yeah.
With APT.
So the fact that you got all your gems to compile without this, I don't know what version of Rails are you trying to build?
Rails for this one is 5.2.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm trying to set up a 6, so maybe that was it.
But I think this one, it's a library, so it's like probably loading it. That's the problem. So it must, I'm not sure, it must maybe ship pre-compiled or have the headers, but not the other stuff.
Yeah, hey, Will, I see you're unmuted, but I still can't hear you.
It's working now?
Oh, yeah, it's working now.
Here we go. Yeah, I hadn't used this particular installation yet for anything like video conferencing, so I hadn't set up the audio settings.
Oh.
Cool. Well, do you have a question for Mark?
Not off the top of my head quite yet. I mostly came to observe and see what kind of things other people were asking, but if I do think of something, I'll be sure to ask.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have any experience using Alpine Linux? Or
not Alpine, no.
I'm trying to build a tiny Docker image, and this has turned into a help Mark session instead of a Mark session.
So do you do Rails development primarily, Will? JavaScript or?
Almost all Rails, mostly with Rails 6. I actually just got started a few months ago. So I started like right around when Rails 6 was fully released.
Cool.
Oh, okay. So are you a new developer then? Is that why, or
Yeah.
were you using different technology?
Yeah, it's my first foray into development since university, when I took 2 years of computer science back in 2005. So it's been a long time away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started going to the YagerB meetups in March, and
nice.
I've been going ever since. And they've been fantastic with like helping me get perspective on what's going on right now, and getting a good like start on what techniques to use and where to really get going.
Hey, that worked.
Hey.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, it must have been Will. Thanks, Will.
No problem.
You saved the day.
So you found the library you were missing? So Will, do you usually set up Docker images for your development or no?
I use for anything that I'm actually hosting, I use Doku. So it's pretty straightforward, not much different than just a standard Heroku setup. There's not a whole lot to do aside from doing a few HTTP settings and all that on the server side.
So do you set up your own server and then you can push to it, like sort of how you use Heroku?
Yeah, I've got a DigitalOcean droplet that I host just currently in my personal site on, and I've got another project that's going to be going up on there pretty soon too. So I'm going to get to learn how to have those two things both working side by side in the same droplet with the proper name servers all set up.
And then what's your usual deployment strategy, Mark? Because you're a consultant with a couple clients. Do you use Heroku?
Yeah, so we've been switching. Like originally it was Heroku for a long time, like forever. And then I had a couple clients that were like very Google Cloud focused. So it was App Engine. And we've slowly been shifting those either over to Kubernetes or actually for this one, for the first time, we're using Cloud Run, which I've never done before. And it's basically like Kubernetes has this thing called Knative, which is sort of like the more open, I guess, alternative to Amazon and like Lambdas and stuff like that. And so basically it just scales to 0 with containers. And so when you hit a certain URL, it spins one up. And so basically you just build a container, you say like, this is the URL that goes with it. And when people hit the traffic, it spins up a container. And like, there's a couple other kind of things for accessing databases and other services and stuff. But yeah, it's been okay so far. I've actually been surprised. I do notice though, reducing the image size will make the container spin up faster, which is the same with like a lot of other things. So I've been trying this out, but like this is literally the first project where I've been deploying with Cloud Run. So it's been a little bit of a change. But I mean, most of my apps I deploy with containers now anyway. So that part hasn't been a huge change. I've actually been looking at this one. I'm doing a talk on it at the end, well, next week on the 21st. Rio. It's very like alpha right now, but it's from Rancher. They do a lot of stuff for like, they call them like day 2 and like day 3 kind of Kubernetes cluster stuff where it's about managing services. But it basically gives you a lot of things like you would get with Heroku and stuff like that, but on top of Kubernetes, which is nice. And like with it though, you get a lot of the diagnostic stuff. Like it sets up, I think it used to be Istio and now it's Linkerd as a service mesh, which until I started using Rio, I didn't even know what a service mesh was or why you would care. But basically it lets you go and build a bunch of little containers for all the parts of your app. And then you can record the calls going between them. And if they succeed or if they fail, it'll say like 3% of calls are failing. And then you can click on it and see like the 3%, what were the last couple that failed, and see like the request and the response. And so it makes it way easier to troubleshoot, especially if you do have like a huge application with a lot of traffic and stuff like that. So yeah, apparently that's what a service mesh is for. I had no idea. I think there's other reasons you'd want it too. But it's nice because it literally, like you install Rio and then I'm trying to find a good example here, but to actually go and run something, yeah, you install it on your cluster like this. And then to run something, you can either point it right at a GitHub repo like that. And then whenever the master branch updates, it goes, looks for a Docker file, builds an image and deploys it for you. And you can have like, you know, vanity URLs linked to different services and stuff like that. It's pretty slick. Like it's worked quite well so far. But they're definitely like, I think they're version 0.5 right now. And like the upgrade from 0.4 to 0.5, they switched from Istio as the service mesh to Linkerd to reduce some of the requirements on your cluster. And like everything broke. So like it's definitely not production ready, but I set up like this one, alpha beta staging, in like 2 minutes. And it was nice because like with this one, it handled generating the certificates with Let's Encrypt and all that for you. So it just like out of the box, it makes all the calls it needs to do that. It uses like Cert Manager and it's like super simple. Didn't require a lot of work at all. And basically now whenever my GitHub repo updates, you can just do a build and deploy. So, which is what I'm looking for. So yeah, because I found Kubernetes is great, but like it's not opinionated enough sometimes. Like there's so many different ways to deploy and do things, and like sometimes I just don't care that much. You know, like I have 10 different apps that I'm deploying, for example, and I want them all to deploy the same way, and I want to be able to do something like this where it deploys right away. And so that's why I was interested in this, because I was basically writing scripts on my own for each project that we're doing stuff like this. And there were some other things, like it does rolling deploys and auto scaling quite well, which is nice. So like, I'm just trying to find their links here. But yeah, you can go and like, you can make a new service here. That's what they call like your apps basically as a service. You can give it a name, but then you can go and stage new versions based off an image instead. And then it'll either, when you stage it, you can promote it and it'll automatically do a gradual rollout over like 5 minutes. So it'll swap out the different containers and like, you know, 5% of your traffic will go to the new one. And then over 5 minutes, it switches to all of the traffic going. And so that's like, again, for some of my clients, that doesn't matter at all. But, you know, there's some where it's like a more financial site or like a heavier traffic site. And having that staggered rollout is nice because if things do start to go sideways, you can stop it quite quickly too, and then just roll back. So
is that something you would think of doing in the future, Will, or is Heroku meeting all your needs right now? Like, do you work for a company, or are you consultant?
Not yet. No. I'm still kind of in the training and starting to shift into the job application phase of my journey, I guess. And yeah, for my personal projects, for the most part, if something needs to be persistent, then I've got the DigitalOcean droplet to handle that, and the free tier, or not the free tier, the $5 a month tier is more than enough to handle the stuff with the usage of my project so far. And then everything that's smaller than that, yeah, I just push to Heroku.
Yeah.
If it doesn't need to be consistent, like if the 15-second startup time isn't gonna be a big problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, aside from what other services your customers are using, what kind of, I guess, aspects go into what platform as a service you end up using for an individual project?
I feel like for me right now, I've been really changing my answer to that question a lot. Like it has gone. It was Heroku for most of them. And then a couple years ago, like 2 of them switched to App Engine, which I didn't really like, to be honest. Like, there was so much kind of custom App Engine stuff, and developing was always different. And so as soon as there was talk of switching to Kubernetes from that, I was like, yeah, let's do that. Fully support that, because it is a lot more just based around the container and like environmental variables. Similar to how you would have it on Heroku or something. But I mean, honestly, for me, I would say like Doku and Heroku are great if you don't want to have any kind of management of DevOps or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Doku is nice because it's so similar to Heroku, but you do have that control on your own.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can afford to justify the billing that goes with Heroku, I think there's a real sweet spot there for a lot of clients. And they do handle that scaling and stuff so well. And, if it's a huge app, then you start to see some pretty big bills.
Right.
But at that point too, you can get a DevOps person if you need. So I think I'd have to check, but I know as recently as last year, like Jobber was using Heroku for everything. And yeah. So, I think you'd be in good company using something like Heroku. Okay. For me, part of it too is I have been very interested in learning Kubernetes. It seems like that's where a lot of momentum in the industry is going. But at the same time too, I do think for most developers, there's just too much going on. Like getting an app bootstrapped with Kubernetes is a lot of work. And like there are answers out there. There's stuff like I've used Kustomize, there's Helm. But like for me, I hadn't done any real Kubernetes work until I want to say February or March. And it was just so much. Like there was so much stuff in there to pick up, and like the lack of opinion and the plethora of options was really kind of overwhelming, like trying to understand what to use. And so that's where I was like really thinking that this Rio thing is cool, because like they're super active on their Slack, and basically to get your Kubernetes so you can do this, you just go Rio install, and then it just spins up any services and stuff it needs, and like looks at your cluster and makes sure it's all provisioned properly. And then you're just like Rio run stuff. And that so far has worked pretty well for me.
Nice.
So, I think this one, there's still like, I had trouble in version 0.4. This website here is all like Webpack and stuff like that. And like, it looks really nice. And I'm actually looking at optimizing it. But right now it takes on my DigitalOcean thing, I think it's 14 minutes to build the Docker container.
Okay.
All the Webpack stuff and things like that it has to do. And Rio was set to time out the builds at 10 minutes, like assuming that they failed.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, so I kept getting like this thing where it wouldn't finish. And so I'd set it up to build the image on actually using GitHub Actions, and then push to Docker Hub, and then provision and like stage a new revision for Rio that way. And that's working for me right now. Mm-hmm. But as of the latest version, they've actually changed that, and you can manually configure that timeout. So, I don't know if I want to have a build that takes that long anyway. I think there'd be some work in there, but
might be some optimization to do there.
Yeah, I couldn't believe this. Like, I'm just taking over this here in the last month, and there's like 4,000 JavaScript source files or something. And
Wow.
like it's definitely the biggest app that I've seen in terms of running through Webpack. And it's very well organized. You know, everything is like the reducers are here, you know, the action composers and like things are here, and like all the components are nicely broken down and clear. But yeah, there's just so many source files. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So Mark, for your clients, I'm not sure. Maybe you don't have to go into the details about your clients, but which ones do you get to decide on the hosting? Like I'm assuming for smaller ones, and which ones the one you had there was ATB. Like they probably they already have some hosting set up that they want you to use. Like how do you have any say in that? How does that work?
It just depends. You know, like usually they either don't care or there's something very specific they want you to use. So I mean, even for this, my dog might start barking here in a second. There's something in the front door. I definitely have found that like ATB, because it is like a kind of marketing website, they're pretty hands off. They just said like you have to use Google, and like they recommended using that Cloud Run thing. And like Cloud Run has been pretty good. I think I can pull it up in one of my other accounts that I can show. So this is my hosting, and I don't really care if people see it. Yeah, so this is the Disco. This is one of my clients. They're on my profile, so I think I can say that. But like, if you come down here, I'm not using Cloud Run with them, but it's super easy to do. Where is it? Let me type right. Cloud Run. I guess I haven't even enabled it for this using this one. Yeah, okay. So basically you just create a service and you put in the container URL. You can pick like either to run it on your own cluster, which they call Anthos. I don't really want to do that because it's expensive. Or you can do the fully managed one, which is, for my purposes, much cheaper. And then you put in like the name of what you want to run. So like, hello world. And here, let me just find out if I can find like a little hello world container or something. Node. So we can figure that out. Yeah, here we go. Oh, they want me to build it. They have a pre-built image. Yeah, see, this is annoying. They use the Google one by default, but you don't actually have to do that. You can use it with Docker Hub. So let me just check the port they're listening on here. I can find one that listens on the same port. World port 8080, it looks like.
So this is what you would use to host like smaller clients or clients that didn't have their own hosting set up already?
Well, this is what ATB's actually asked me to use for them.
Oh.
But it's nice because like there's not really much to it. You basically just say the container you want to run, and it seems to work. So I'm gonna see if I can just do it like that. That work? No, I need the.
Is this making sense, Will, or do you have any questions while Mark's clicking away here?
Yeah, I'm just playing over that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about asset hosting as well. Once we're kind of finished this, because that I did a little bit of Amazon S3, and their IAM system is just so difficult to navigate that was really unpleasant for me. And if there's like a good alternative to that, I'd be really interested to hear about it.
Honestly, that stuff is always annoying. Like the number of projects where I have issues with, like this ATB one, for example, it took like 2 weeks to get my permissions sorted out so that I could deploy.
Yeah.
And especially like in a larger organization, that's the challenge, is always like going and trying to to deploy those kind of things, there's so many permissions you have to get, but I mean, basically on Amazon, you're using S3 or maybe CloudFront, depending how much you want to pay and how much performance is an issue.
Mhm.
And, on the same side, like with Google, you're going to be using their storage buckets. But a lot of those changes too in Rails aren't that crazy to make. You do your asset precompile and you can get it to push what you need to your CDN, wherever it is.
Mhm.
And then as long as you're using the links properly in your app, it'll just update those with the correct hashes of the things in production for you. And like, it's actually, honestly, compared to other platforms, I found using a CDN with Rails is much easier.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I don't know. We have a .NET project right now where we're trying to do that and like updating the React code to understand where stuff is on the CDN, and like we're having issues with stuff being out of date because that it's not doing hashing properly, or the hashing is out of date. And yeah, I would say like Rails is a really good language for doing that, or platform for doing that in, because it does so much of that out of the box.
Right on.
So what kind of assets are you looking to store? Just like user uploaded pictures or larger files?
Usually that's the case for me. Yeah, just like profile pictures and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So are you using active storage?
No.
So I would say active storage is nice because it's official and it's part of it. But I definitely, like I've had 2 projects now where I've tried to move over.
Over from Paperclip, Mark?
One was Paperclip and the other one was Carrier Wave.
Okay.
That's what I was using, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that Carrier Wave I would probably stick with right now if you're set up on that. Because there's a couple of things like validations and stuff that are just missing from active storage. And I think they were supposed to come out in 6. I have a feeling that they didn't come out. So just stuff like, checking types for file uploads and like checking that the file was of a certain size and things like that are missing. And so I really struggled in moving to active storage because a lot of that stuff that especially for the Paperclip actually I had a lot of validations to be done to the files over time. And those just didn't translate over, and I had to write them by scratch myself or find kind of third-party ones to work with extra. And it was just such a basic kind of simple thing that it seemed a bit weird that they'd released active storage without it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, there is more stuff that's coming in active storage, and like I do like the fact that it's kind of out of the box. I feel like eventually it's going to be more popular than it is right now. But definitely there are a couple gotchas if you're going to use it, and just kind of watch out for those.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It does work. I mean, we've been using it for about a year now, and the files are uploading. So that should not be too much.
So what's your goal, Will? Did you want to be a consultant, or are you looking for a full-time gig somewhere?
I'm looking for full-time, at least to start, but probably forever. Because honestly, I like the idea of having a consistent team that you can rely on and that you're comfortable with. And yeah, I've done freelance work in other industries before, and it kind of gets a little bit lonely for me. Like I miss that teamwork.
Yeah. I have to say that's one of the reasons why I like the Edmonton Slack. I also, as you can see, work from home, and it's nice for those little kind of coffee shop chats.
For sure. Speaking of which, I don't think I've seen you, Mark, at the YegRB meetup since I started going in March.
No, it's one of those ones I really want to go to, but honestly, weekends are really tough for me right now.
That's fair.
I'm training for a marathon, and it's basically like every Sunday morning I'm gone for like 4 hours.
Okay.
Just Saturday, I have trouble being like, see ya.
Yeah.
So, but that's done in January, and I really would like to come out to some of them.
Cool.
In the past, I used to go to them all the time, and so I'd like to go a bit more. I don't know. I mean, I work in Ruby quite a bit. Pretty much all my projects right now, it's about 50% Ruby, 50% JavaScript. And especially with Ruby, I find so many projects, it can be so hard to tell just looking at them where the kind of rough edges are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just being able to talk to people who've actually used them makes such a difference.
How is that kind of shaken out with some of your recent projects, like things you kind of didn't expect to be a little bit more troublesome than you thought?
Well, I mean, for me, the big one I was just telling Chris about was even just doing the Rails upgrades. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
we have one where it's like a sales reporting app. And so there's a bunch of fees and stuff it reports on, and we have all of these custom queries that we were running. And they were originally written, like, some of them were like 6 years old. And I want to say at the time, it might have even been a Rails TV2 app. Like, it was quite a while ago that they were written. And we've been slowly upgrading, and like most of the parts we've converted over to active record syntax as much as we can. But there are a few, and I just got a bug report this week, and it's definitely related to the upgrade, and I just no one has seen it for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going through trying to like figure out like, where's the error? This giant blob of SQL. And,
Nice.
it's like a column name doesn't get named right because active record has changed how it calls them, or does a join or something, right?
Right.
And so that's been annoying. Like, I would say I found the meetups useful for asking for advice about stuff like that. And just asking for ideas about what people have gone through and things.
Right. Well, you did miss a pretty good talk on that. I think it was in June. Can't remember who it was from Jobber talked about their upgrade from Rails 5 to Rails 5.2. Or was it even? I think it was Rails 4 to Rails 5 altogether, and then to 5.2.
Yeah, that's what I did with this one. It was 4.2 to 5, and then 5.2, and it's on the radar for going to 6 next, but we haven't done that.
Have you found at least so far that it seems to get easier over time to upgrade different versions because the processes become a little bit more like intelligently thought out, or?
Well, so it depends too. Like, as part of doing the upgrade, we moved some things from Paperclip, which has been deprecated now, and like they say, don't use Paperclip anymore, please.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to jump to active storage there, and that definitely, I think it was a good thing to do. But at the same time, it was quite painful. We had a bunch of things that we had to remap over files and stuff, and it just was a lot of work, and it felt like busy work rather than like we were actually adding new features or even like eliminating that much from our code base. It was just, we have to switch to active storage because we can't use Paperclip anymore, and that was kind of annoying. And then what else? We tried to use Active Job. And again, it was something similar. Like, that one went quite a bit smoother, to be honest. Like, we had a couple kind of custom things that we could either find other gems for, or rewrote a little bit on our end to kind of fill in the gaps, and it worked pretty well. Like, I think progressive jobs, we had to do a little bit of work there, but active job was a much smoother transition. And maybe some of that too was our API was a bit smoother as well. But like the file stuff, so much of that is just exposed through active record that it, changing the library, the whole API surface for handling files changed. And so there's just so many places to update. So one thing, I know we had like 8 different kinds of uploaders, and after doing that upgrade, they all had one common mixin instead of having like their own implementations, which was nice. So yeah, that's a big thing. Like, more and more, I tend to use mixins rather than like base classes and stuff like that. And mixins where I try to have specs to go with the mixin. So like for that project,
Mark, maybe Will doesn't know either. I'm not familiar what a mixin is. So.
Oh, okay. So basically, there's units of composition, right? And so in traditional kind of object-oriented, usually what people think of is a class-based inheritance. But there's lots of other ways that you can reuse code. You can use functions. You can also do something where you reuse code by composing objects out of other functions. And so if you, maybe I can pull up some code here. New window. Oh, new file. New window. So I'm just going to spin up IRB here. I should have been prepared for this.
Because what was the other way to include code in Rails that was, I don't know if it's still popular anymore, but I see it every once in a while. It's not it started with an A. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. Concerns or something like that, wasn't it? Sorry, I guess it didn't.
Yeah, concerns. This would be similar to that.
That's similar to that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here, I'm just going to call this like composition.
So, sorry if I asked a question you already know the answer to, Will.
No worries. Not just about me.
I need to find a better place to save this. It looks like Mark. Where's my sandbox? There we go. I always have this folder called sandbox that is like my scratch pad. Okay, so like normally you would have something like base class, right? And then you could have in here def greet or something like that, right? Hello. And then if you want to have one that uses it, you could say like fancy greeter, right? And it uses base class. So I save this, make a new fancy greeter, then say greet. It should say hello. So that there. Okay. Get that right. Broke something. There we go. Okay, so right now, like that's kind of what most people are used to when you're kind of first thinking of composition, right? And you know, you can override it and say like greet fancy hello, right? But there's other ways to do this too. The other way you could make it work is right now you're tying fancy greet to this base class, right? And so it can only have one base class. So if you wanted to introduce like another unit of like reuse, you would have to maybe have something that base class extends or something like that, right? And maybe fancy greeter would be, you know, could have like an output formatting thing or something that it uses too. And so you kind of have this point in your code where it's like you have to choose, like, is fancy greeter a greeter, or is it, you know, something that does formatting of IO? But another way that you could do it is get rid of that. So go here. And now it's not extending anything. But what we could do is make a module. Reader. Oops. Stop me if you have any questions too. Great. So, and then if I wanted to make this work like a greeter, we would say down here, include greeter. And so you've probably seen includes in your code from other things. But we could go like that, and now it should say module greet if I've done this right. Yeah. Okay. So is this making sense so far?
Yeah, it's good for me.
Yeah. So sort of like how you would have a base class. Instead of using a base class to share functionality, we're using this module and we can pull it in. But the cool thing is too, you could have like module, say, name format, right? And given name, it says like, hello, name. Oh, I've been doing too much JavaScript. I forgot how to do string interpolation. I always forget this.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder why my code isn't picking it up. Oh well. Okay, so there, and then down here, for example, I could include name formatter. And then down here in my like, let's say it goes like this. It's greet. We'll make this use greeting. So it's going to put So down here, if I do this again, it should say module greeting still. Yeah, but if I change this now, I could go and say def greeting, and then say format aim. Well, now it should say hello Will. I've done this right. There's like that dramatic pauses things. I've got Docker running, and I think that and Zoom, yeah, are using up a lot. So you can see here now, like I've got these different concerns, you could call them modules, whatever you want. And it's a nice way to include functionality without having that tight coupling around the base class. The other thing too is it makes it really easy to test this code. And so you could go and, for example, here, like with the greeter, right? For greet to work, we know that they need to have a greeting, right? So you might in your specs then have something where it's like, use our spec, right? You could do shared example and say something like act like a greeter. And then you could do it. For greeting. Turn string. I don't know. This is probably a terrible test. I'm sorry. And you could say subject or expect dot greeting to. Let's do this. I think a good way to test that it's a string. This is a terrible example of what it is. But we could say like to be a string or something. I'm making this up for the case of example.
You'd be is a.
Yeah, there you go. So, and again, I probably shouldn't do like is a things in Ruby, but I'm just going to do this anyway. So I don't think that
question mark there after the is a, I think.
Oh yeah, right here?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. There you go. I'm glad you know your spec. So, but like something like this then, when you're writing your test for fancy greeter, you would go describe fancy greeter. And you could say it behaves like then a greeter. I think I've got that wrong there. Should be like that. But then anything where I've been gone and I want them to include that module and kind of do what they need for that module to work, I can just include that shared example. And that way, if my greeter changes, like if the greeter module changes, I just have to update that shared example and all of the places that are using it will get those new tests as well. So like this was something that I used with the, when we changed from Paperclip to active storage. And so we introduced a module that all of the uploads could use. And then we had like some shared examples for the basic things that they needed to do, as well as they all had their own kind of custom logic as well to go around that. Like I think for that one, it was like tabular data. And so the importers would work with rows of data. And so they had to have an import row function. And there were some basic things that, like if there was exceptions they had to do and stuff like that. And so we would just have one set of shared examples that we could mix into all of them to make sure that they kept to do that.
That's actually pretty cool. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it's honestly, like it's one of those things where usually when you're doing modules too, you kind of test the module functionality, but not like the other way around. Mm-hmm. And I found like this has definitely caught some weird bugs that I would have otherwise missed.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of this actually came from, there was a really good book, and I'm trying to.
So is that the preferred way to do it now rather than using concerns? Or because concerns seem like very much the same thing, where it adds a bunch of methods to a class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's, I mean, I think this would be the same thing. Like usually if I was writing a concern in Rails or Ruby, and that was my kind of nomenclature, I could use that. There's also something very specific to Rails, where you have like in Rails, there's an actual concern that you can use.
Oh, okay, maybe that's what
So it's active support concern. And so sometimes when you're working in a Rails code base specifically, you'll see this. And what it does is it lets you work with modules, like how we're doing here. So you can see like there, where we have a module here, right? That we include here. But if you look, like there's sometimes when you go and you include one module in another, and especially if you're doing things where you're concerned about how things are like disambiguated and what is going to be called first and stuff like that, and also how things like the parent classes are handled, that can get quite confusing with modules on their own. And so the active support concern just kind of clears some of that away, and it makes things work kind of more how you would expect them to work intuitively. And it also adds this thing here included. So you could go and you'll see a lot of the time when you include stuff in Rails, you can include it, and then it automatically also goes and defines, you know, other things, right? You might call some functions in other modules and stuff like that for you. And so this code in the included block would do that. And you can still do that yourself. Like you can have, here, this is their example doing the same thing. There's an actual thing in Rails. So if you go and look in, or sorry, not in Rails, in Ruby. So Ruby included. There's like a callback, and this is how so much of like the magic in Rails and things like that actually works. So when you include, you have a module and it has this included method here defined. When you go and have another module or a class is actually an instance of a module. When it's included, like when you say include this module, whatever code is in here will be run in the context of the module that it's being included in.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, and there's also the other one too is the other thing you could do here is go and say, right now we're including, and what that means is that instances of this module or instances of this class will have those methods defined, but you can actually go like this too and say extend greeter. And then the difference here is like down here we're doing fancy greeter.new. We're creating an instance of it, right? But down here, if we go like that now and run this, I'm just thinking if I did this right. Oh yeah, see something's wrong. Oh, I'm not using RSpec. Yeah, so down here, what it does is instead of including the module and the lookup chain for instances of it, it actually goes and adds the methods to the module itself. Yeah. So there's actually a few interesting things you can do with that. Like you could go here, and right now, like we have module greeter. You can actually get really weird and say stuff like extend self. I think that's the right thing. Let's try it. And I'll go greeter.greet.
Great.
The methods that it introduces on itself, or like that it adds, will be called on itself. Oh, great. Great, of course. There you go. Yeah, so you can see there, it's like actually going and using those off of the object, and you can even include things or extend things on themselves. But back to what I was saying there, like this included one, there's an equivalent one called extended, and it is just, yeah, right here. And it gets called when something extends a module rather than includes it. So if you actually look, like a lot of things in Active Record and stuff like that, that's how they work. They have callbacks there that when you include them or extend them, they use the code in this kind of callback to go and do a lot of the magic.
Like the associations and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was actually crazy. Like once I saw this, I'm like, oh, that code makes so much more sense now.
It sure does.
Mm-hmm. So the one other thing I found that was useful was, where is it? I think if we start up IRB, composition. I'm going to have to go here in a minute to just.
Yeah, I was about to say that our time is almost up. So
remember how to do this. Require relative. No, it doesn't like that. Am I spelling it wrong? Sandbox composition. Anyone see what I'm doing wrong with my require relative there?
where's the path for IRB when you go into it?
Well, normally it would use like the kind of require path that comes from Ruby itself, but I thought require relative just included the. Here, we do it.
Yeah, like what's the working directory for IRB? I'm not sure.
I know how to do this. How is it? It's like Ruby path or something like that. Okay. 1 second. Not Ruby platform. Ruby. No, tell me what they are. 1 second. I'm so used to the Rails console. Ruby path. Okay, 1 second. Let's try this again. Let's make sure we're in the right directory. We're in the sandbox. We have composition there. I guess I could jump into one of my Rails apps too if this doesn't work. Actually, do I have one here? This is the one I'm just setting up the Docker container, so we'll have to see if this even works. I'm guessing it'll fail. Let's try it. It'll probably complain about the database not being initialized. Let's see. That's why poor computer grinds to a halt. Anyway, I'll see if I can just find it. But there's a thing in, if you go in and Ruby context line number. I always forget the name of it, but binding, that's what it is. Ruby binding function. Yeah. Okay, so in here.
Oh, not if a method is defined, but where.
Yeah, I found this useful when like stuff is being monkey patched. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah, thumbs up for that.
Yeah, a couple of times I've been like, because I think I was actually a Spree project I was working on, and there was stuff that was getting like monkey patched, and I could not figure out who was doing it or where it was coming from. So, and then someone showed me this. Yeah, so you go, you have whatever it is, and then you can get like basically a handle to the method using this method and the signal or the symbol, which is like the name of the method you want. But then there's a bunch of stuff you can get off it, including the source location, which will tell you where it came from.
Can
so
you link to that in the chat here in Zoom?
Sure. Maybe I'll just paste this whole thing. Oh, how do I get back to my chat now? Oh, there we go. Remote control, participants, more. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this was one that I learned doing a job last year, and I was just like, how did I not know that before? That would like save so much of my mental energy.
No, I agree. I've had that problem too, where it's like, where is this magic method coming from? And you're trying to find it, and you just don't seem to find it anywhere.
Well, especially because so many Ruby things will, like, they don't have, you can't search the source code for the method name. It's like, you know, generated from the names of the columns in the database or something. And so being able to find who defined it can be very useful.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yes. Well, are there any other kind of things I can share? I don't know how helpful I was or not, but those are just some of her names. There's Sandy Metz, that is the name, and she has a very good book that I think every Rubyist should read.
Are you talking about Pooter?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just started to read that this week, actually. I'm not a big fan of the cycling metaphor that she uses specifically, because it is kind of hard if you're not a cyclist to wrap your head around, but the actual book and, you know, suggestions that she makes and the guidance she has is really solid.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, it looks like, is there a new version? Because I mean, I read this probably 6 years ago. It says published August 2018. So maybe there is a newer one.
Well, this is the second
Yeah,
edition.
second. Oh no, I better get reading. But like this one, the nice thing was, obviously it references Rails and stuff like that. But it was more, a lot of the things in it I thought would apply regardless of the language you're using.
Mhm. Yeah, she's intended it to be a fundamental a fundamental object-oriented book, just using Ruby as an example.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I would highly recommend this one. And the other one, I'm sure most people have heard of. I can't spell today. This is what happens when I have people watching me.
Oh, this has a second edition too.
Yeah, this one actually, I think it might have just sold out, but there is, yeah, here it is. There's a book club reading this right now. So if you hop on to this channel on Slack, I think someone just posted it. Yeah, one more ticket available.
I missed that channel.
Yes, this is a fairly new one. I think it might have kind of soft launched a little bit, to be honest. But there is a book club reading Pragmatic. I think chapter 2 is like for next week. And it's just going to be a couple chapters at a time. So not like a heavy time commitment at all. Oh. But we're going to have more of those. So
nice.
We'll make sure that it's around. But yeah, this was another one. I'm just working on the 20th anniversary edition myself right now. But in terms of thinking about software as a craft and something where it's like being a programmer is like part of a process of learning and iterating on things. It was really eye-opening as a young programmer to see that, and it's just not the way that I had been taught to think about my career as a programmer or even the code that I was writing. And so I mean, so far I'm only halfway through chapter 2, but I'm quite enjoying it. It's got a lot of practical tips and stuff, and it covers a lot of the kind of peripheral things around programming. There's like talk about estimating and dealing with clients, and understanding requirements and prototyping and like all of those kind of things, and lots of anecdotes and just things where it's kind of it's like they just took these two really well-seasoned developers and like sucked all the contents out of their brains. So
cool.
Yeah, it's a good one, and it isn't like a huge heavy read. It's a lot of like there is some source code in it, but more of it is like if you're stuck on this, try doing this, or like if you have like a client that you want like more explanations from, try this fun little game to play with them, or consider learning this. There's lots of different things.
A little bit more exposure to the soft skills side of it than a lot of technical books.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like it's a technical soft skills book rather than like even a programming book. Like it's not going to teach you how to program or anything like that, but it's a lot about how how are you continuously learning and like different ways to do that, and
nice.
Making decisions about software and like when to use new software and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It was one that they had the other day. It was so there's dry, like don't repeat yourself. A lot of that in this one, but there's one that I think is new in this edition. I have to go back and look, but the big thing that they talked about a lot was ETC, which is easy to change, right? And so they were talking about how a lot of code and like a lot of what developers are thinking about when they're writing frameworks or things like that is actually thinking about making their code easier to change. And so they were saying like that should be one of the underlying things whenever you write code is like thinking about, am I making this code base easier or harder to change?
Yeah. Actually, I was looking up what service to use for search for a project that I'm working on right now just yesterday, and Ransack for Ruby there was highly recommended before, but I took a look into the GitHub, and it looks like it's really fallen off the rails as far as maintainability goes. Very difficult because they've taken care of so many edge cases now that they've really made the code difficult to adjust.
Interesting.
So it looks like, unless they really turn things around, it's not going to be long for this world, or at least not the best solution for long. So while now it still might be, one of the most popular uses for like creating a search for your Rails database, it's probably not the way to go unless maintainability changes on it.
And which one was that? Which project?
Ransack. Oh, the project that I'm working on.
Or no, the one that you look like at a
Yeah. Yeah. So it ended up being that versus SearchKick, which runs on Elasticsearch, and that's what I ended up going with because it looks like it's a lot better maintained. I can count on it working for longer.
It can have its own weird issues, but I think you would get a lot of support with Elasticsearch.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are having problems, I know a lot of people use it, and the issues are pretty well understood. And like so much of it is caching, right?
Yeah.
With Elasticsearch, stuff gets out of date, and so the issues are around making your indexes and stuff performant, but also keeping them up to date.
Right.
All right, I got to bail. I'm sorry. Chris, thank you for setting this up. This was a great idea. I really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, we'll have to try and
Thanks.
set up another one, either with Mark mentoring again, or maybe we can find someone else on slightly different topics. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
My Docker while we did this too.
Okay. I'm gonna. I think when I end the meeting, it might boot everyone out here, so I'm gonna end it right away here, and then Mark and I can talk about posting this online somehow. So, but yeah, thanks again for attending, Will, and thanks for mentoring Mark, answering our questions. That was very, very helpful.
No problem.
Right on. See ya.
Have a good one.